How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, April 18th, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances from yesterday, Saturday, April 17th, 2021. And of course, I'm going to preview everything that's going on today as we navigate through the world of sports one game, one day at a time. Of course, getting started in the NBA, looking at the primetime performances from last night. Getting started in the Staples Center last night, the defending NBA champs, Los Angeles Lakers, were able to beat the Utah Jazz, the holders of the NBA's best record, 127-115 last night, as the game went into overtime and the Lakers were able to outscore the Jazz 17-5 to pull off their 35th win of the season. For the Utah Jazz, their leading scorer was their starting point guard and former Los Angeles Laker, Jordan Clarkson, who finished with 27 points and 5 rebounds in 46 minutes, as he shot 11 for 27 from the field and 5 for 15 from 3. Their starting power forward, Ersan Ilyasova, would finish with 20 points, 5 rebounds, 4 steals, and 2 blocks, as well as 6 fouls in 32 minutes, as he shot 7 for 11 from the field and 6 for 8 from 3 before fouling out. And alongside him in the starting lineup, their starting shooting guard, Joe Ingles, would finish with 20 points and 14 assists, as well as 3 steals in 39 minutes, as Ingles shot 6 for 14 from the field, 6 for 12 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. For the defending champs, Los Angeles Lakers, their leading scorer was their starting center, Andre Drummond, who finished with 27 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 steals in 30 minutes, as he would finish shooting 10 for 15 from the field and 7 for 8 from the foul line. Their starting point guard out of Germany, Dennis Schröder, would finish with 25 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, and a couple of blocks in 39 minutes, as he shot 11 for 24 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. And their starting shooting guard out of Georgia, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, would finish with 25 points, 5 rebounds, and a couple of steals in 41 minutes, as Caldwell-Pope shot 8 for 18 from the field, 5 for 12 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. With this win, the defending champs Los Angeles Lakers are now 35-22. That is the 5th best record in the Western Conference. With this win, they've now won 5 of their last 10. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now sit a game and a half behind the 4th place Denver Nuggets, and they sit 2 games ahead of the 6th place Portland Trail Blazers. Overall, they trail the first place Utah Jazz now by 7 full games in the Western Conference, just to show where they are. And with this loss, the Utah Jazz are now 42-15. That is the best record in the Western Conference and the best record in the NBA. With this loss, they've still won 6 of their last 10 games. And right now in the Western Conference playoff picture, they currently sit a game and a half ahead of the 2nd place Phoenix Suns, 12 games ahead of the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies, and 27.5 games ahead of the 15th place Houston Rockets, just to show where they are in the conference. Jumping out to the other primetime game of the night, the Boston Celtics hosted the Golden State Warriors, and after they enter the 4th quarter completely tied up, the Celtics would outscore the Warriors 30-25 in the 4th quarter to beat the Warriors 119-114. For the Warriors in this matchup, their leading scorer, and I think the leading scorer of the night, would be the Warriors' goated starting point guard Stephen Curry, out of Davidson, who finished with 47 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 5 turnovers in 37 minutes, as he shot 15 for 27 from the field, 11 for 19 from 3, and 6 for 8 from the foul line. And then their starting small forward, former number 1 overall pick Andrew Wiggins out of Kansas, would finish with 22 points in 41 minutes, shooting 8 for 15 from the field and 4 for 5 from the foul line. For the Boston Celtics in this matchup, their leading scorer was their elite starting small forward, Jason Tatum, who finished with 44 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, and a couple of steals in 40 minutes, as he shot 16 for 25 from the field, 5 for 9 from 3, and 7 for 8 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, the Celtics' elite starting point guard, Kemba Walker, would finish with 26 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals in 38 minutes, as he shot 9 for 20 from the field, 4 for 11 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the Boston Celtics are now 31-26. That is the 4th best record in the Eastern Conference. They have now won their last 6 games, which is the best winning streak in the Eastern Conference at the moment. They've won 8 of their last 10 games. And in the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they currently sit 4.5 games behind the third place Milwaukee Bucks, and they currently sit half a game ahead of the fifth place Atlanta Hawks, as they trail the first place Philadelphia 76ers by 8.5 games in the conference. With this loss, the Golden State Warriors are now 28-29. That is the ninth best record in the Western Conference. With this loss, they've now won 5 of their last 10 games. They currently sit 2 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture looking in, as they currently trail the first place Utah Jazz by 14 total games in the conference. Jumping out to the games that weren't on prime time, jumping out to D.C., the Washington Wizards hosted the Detroit Pistons and were able to pull off a 121-100 win after outscoring Detroit by 15 points in the second half. For the Pistons in this matchup, their leading scorers off the bench would be Isaiah Stewart, their center, who finished with 19 points, 12 rebounds, and a couple of blocks in 24 minutes, shooting 7 for 11 from the field, 1 for 1 from 3, and 4 for 6 from the foul line. And alongside him, their point guard out of Duke, Frank Jackson, would finish with 19 points in 26 minutes, shooting 8 for 13 from the field and 3 for 6 from 3. For the Wizards on the night, their leading scorer would be their elite starting shooting guard out of Florida, Bradley Beal, who finished with 37 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals in 35 minutes, as he shot 13 for 22 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, and he would also go on to shoot 7 for 8 from the foul line. Alongside him in the Wizards starting lineup, their elite starting point guard, Russell Westbrook, would finish with 15 points, 14 rebounds, 11 assists, and 2 steals in 30 minutes, as he shot 7 for 17 from the field and 1 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the Washington Wizards are now 23-33. They are tied with the Chicago Bulls for the 10th best record in the Eastern Conference. With this win, they've now won their last 4 games and 6 of their last 10. They currently sit 4.5 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the playoff picture, and they currently sit 16 full games behind the first place Philadelphia 76ers in the conference. With this loss, the Detroit Pistons are now 17-40. That is the worst record in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, they've now lost 6 of their last 10 games, as they currently sit 11 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the playoff picture, and they currently trail the first place Philadelphia 76ers by 22.5 games in the conference. Jumping out to Chicago, the Chicago Bulls hosted the Cleveland Cavaliers and were able to pull up a 106-96 win at home. The big difference would come in the third quarter, where they outscored Cleveland by 12. And of course gave them the momentum for the game. For the Cleveland Cavaliers in this matchup, their point guard duo would score 22 points each. Their point guard out of Vanderbilt, Darius Garland, would finish with 22 points and 12 assists in 40 minutes, as he shot 9 for 21 from the field and 4 for 8 from 3. And their starting point guard, Colin Sexton out of Alabama, would finish with 22 points and 5 rebounds, as well as 5 turnovers in 35 minutes, as he shot 8 for 20 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. For the Chicago Bulls in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their all-star starting center, Nikola Vucevic, who finished with 25 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals in 33 minutes, as he shot 10 for 17 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Chicago Bulls are now 23-33. They are tied with the Washington Wizards for the 10th best record in the Eastern Conference. With this win, they've only won 4 of their last 10 games, as they currently sit 4.5 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture. And overall, they trail the Philadelphia 76ers by 15 games in the conference. And with this loss, the Cleveland Cavaliers are now 20-36. That is the 3rd worst record in the Eastern Conference. They've now lost their last 2 games and 7 of their last 10. They sit 7.5 games out behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently sit 19 full games behind the Philadelphia 76ers in the conference at the moment. Jumping out to Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Bucks hosted the Memphis Grizzlies, and the Grizzlies were able to beat the Bucks 128-115 following their first half, where they outscored Milwaukee by 10. For the Bucks, their leading scorer would be their elite starting power forward, the reigning All-Star Game MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo, who would finish with 28 points, 11 rebounds, and 8 assists in 29 minutes as the Greek Freak shot 10 for 18 from the field and 8 for 12 from the foul line. For the Memphis Grizzlies, their leading scorer would end up being their starting shooting guard out of Duke, Grayson Allen, who finished with 26 points and 2 steals in 34 minutes as he shot 9 for 13 from the field, 7 for 10 from 3, and 1 for 2 from the foul line. And their starting small forward, Dylan Brooks, would finish with 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals in 34 minutes as he shot 9 for 15 from the field and a perfect 3 for 3 from the line. With this win, the Memphis Grizzlies are now 29-26. That is currently the 8th best record in the Western Conference, as they have now won their last 2 games and 7 of their last 10. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they sit a game behind the 7th place Dallas Mavericks, and they sit 2 games ahead of the 9th place Golden State Warriors and the 10th place San Antonio Spurs, who are just on the outside looking in, and they currently trail the Utah Jazz by 12 whole games in the conference and in the playoff picture, just to show where the Grizzlies are. With this loss, the Milwaukee Bucks are now 35-21. That is the 3rd best record in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, they've still won 6 of their last 4 games. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they sit 3 games behind the 2nd place Brooklyn Nets, and they sit 4.5 games ahead of the 4th place Boston Celtics, as they sit 4 whole games behind the 1st place Philadelphia 76ers in the Eastern Conference. And last but not least, jumping out to Phoenix, the holders of the NBA's 2nd best record, the Phoenix Suns, hosted the San Antonio Spurs, and the Spurs were able to beat the Suns 111-85. They would end up outscoring Phoenix by 19 points in the first half to gain the momentum they needed to pick up their 27th win of the season. For the Phoenix Suns on the night, their leading scorer would come off the bench as their point guard out of West Virginia, Javon Carter, would finish with 17 points in 25 minutes, shooting 7 for 11 from the field and 3 for 7 from 3. Out of their starters, their release starting shooting guard, Devin Booker, would finish with 15 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals in 27 minutes, as he shot 6 for 18 from the field and 3 for 4 from the foul line. And their release starting point guard, Chris Paul, would finish with 6 points, 3 rebounds, and 6 assists in 22 minutes, as he shot 3 for 10 from the field on the night. For the San Antonio Spurs, their leading scorer would come off the bench as their small forward, Rudy Gay, would finish with 19 points, 5 rebounds, and a couple of blocks in 23 minutes, as he shot 8 for 14 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 1 for 1 from the foul line. With this win, the San Antonio Spurs are now 27-28. That is the 10th best record in the Western Conference. With this win, they've only won 3 of their last 10 games, as they sit 2 games behind the Memphis Grizzlies outside of the Western Conference playoff picture looking in, and they currently trail the Utah Jazz by 14 total games in the Western Conference playoff picture, just to show where they are. And with this loss, the Phoenix Suns are now 40-16. That is the 2nd best record in the Western Conference and the 2nd best record in the NBA for that matter. Despite this loss, they've still won 8 of their last 10 games. And in the Western Conference playoff picture, they sit a game and a half behind the 1st place Utah Jazz, and they sit 2 games ahead of the 2nd place Los Angeles Clippers, just to show where they specifically sit at this very moment. But following yesterday's games, that is what the NBA is looking like today, leading into today's Sunday matchups. Looking at how today's schedule is looking, starting with the prime times at 1 o'clock, the New York Knicks are going to host the New Orleans Pelicans as Julius Randle and Zion Williamson look to face off against one another. At 3:30, following the Knicks-Pelicans game, the Miami Heat, the defending Eastern Conference champs, are going to host the Brooklyn Nets on ESPN as well. Kevin Durant versus Jimmy Butler, a well-anticipated matchup. And then at 7:30, the Dallas Mavericks, the current holders of the 7th best record in the Western Conference, are going to host the Sacramento Kings on NBA TV, as De'Aaron Fox has also been a player that's been heating up as of recently. And following that game on NBA TV, the Los Angeles Clippers, the holders of what look like, or the holders of the NBA's 4th best record and the 3rd best record in the West, are going to host the Minnesota Timberwolves, the holders of the NBA's worst record on NBA TV. So, of course, that'll be a good matchup to watch. And then outside of the games on primetime, the Atlanta Hawks are going to host the Indiana Pacers at 1 o'clock. The Charlotte Hornets are going to host the Portland Trailblazers at 7. Same with the Orlando Magic hosting the Rockets and the Raptors hosting the Thunder as well. And that's what the NBA, of course, is looking like for today. Staying within the arena, but shifting the focus to the ice, jumping out really quickly to see what's going on in the NHL. And of course, it's totally worth noting. It's worth noting that every team in the NHL has to stay within their own division to play their own games. Starting with the games north of the Canadian border, the Winnipeg Jets hosted the Edmonton Oilers, and the Oilers were able to beat the Jets 3-0 to pick up their 26th win of the season. With this win, the Edmonton Oilers now hold the third best record in the North Division as they trail the Toronto Maple Leafs by 6 points in the table. Jumping out to Montreal, the Canadiens hosted the Ottawa Senators as the Senators were able to beat the Canadiens 4-0, led by their right winger Batherson's 2 goals and assist. With their 15th win of the season, the Senators are still sitting at the bottom of the North Division as they trail the Toronto Maple Leafs by 26 total points in the division. Jumping out to, or those are the games that were taking place in the North Division. Going down to see what's going on in the East Division, the New York Rangers hosted the New Jersey Devils and were able to pull off a 6-3 win. Of course, they wouldn't be able to do so without their left winger Panarin's 3 assists and a goal. Their center, Zibanejad, would also have 3 assists himself, and their right winger, Buchnevich, would finish with a hat trick with 3 goals himself. With their 22nd win of the season, the New York Rangers now hold the 5th best record in the East Division as they trail the Washington Capitals by 12 points. Jumping out to D.C., the Flyers hosted the Washington Capitals as the Capitals were able to beat the Flyers 6-3, led by their defender Carlson, who had 4 assists himself, and their future Hall of Fame left winger Alexander Ovechkin would finish with 2 goals and an assist himself. With their 29th win of the season, the Washington Capitals now currently hold the best record in the East Division as they sit 3 points ahead of the Pittsburgh Penguins with 1 more game played. So mathematically, they're back in it. Speaking of the Penguins went to Buffalo and were able to beat the Sabres 3-2 after scoring 2 of their goals in the third period. With their 20th win of the season, the Penguins now hold the second best record in the East Division as they sit 3 full points behind the Washington Capitals with 1 less game played thus far this season. Taking a look at what's going on in the Central as we jump to see what's going on there, the Carolina Hurricanes hosted the Nashville Predators and were able to pull off a 3-1 win after coming into the third period tied at 1. With their 29th win of the season, the Hurricanes now hold the best record in the Central Division as they sit 1 point ahead of the second place Florida Panthers with 2 less games played than the Panthers, by the way. Speaking of the Panthers went to Tampa Bay and were able to beat the Lightning 5-3 as 3 of their goals came in the first period. With their 28th win of the season, the Florida Panthers now hold the second best record in the Central Division as they trail the Hurricanes by 1 point with 2 more games having played 2 more games in the division. And then checking out what's going on in Detroit, the Detroit Red Wings hosted the Chicago Blackhawks. The Blackhawks were able to beat the Red Wings 4-0 to pick up their 21st win of the season. With this win, the Blackhawks now hold the 5th best record in the Central Division. They now trailed the Carolina Hurricanes by 15 total points in the division. And then jumping out to Dallas, the Dallas Stars hosted the Columbus Blue Jackets. They were able to pull off a 5-1 win after scoring 4 of their goals in the second period. With their 17th win of the season, the Dallas Stars now hold the 6th best record in the Central Division as they now trail the Carolina Hurricanes by 16 points in the division. And then jumping out west to see what's going on out there, the Arizona Coyotes hosted the St. Louis Blues and were able to pull off a 3-2 win after they came into the third period completely tied, and they came back from being down 2-0 to pull off the 3-2 win. With their 20th win on the season, the Arizona Coyotes now hold the 4th best record in the West Division as they now trail the Colorado Avalanche by 19 points in the division. Jumping out to Minnesota for the last but not least, the Minnesota Wild hosted the San Jose Sharks and were able to pull off a 5-2 win to pick up their 27th win of the season. With this win, the Minnesota Wild now have 56 points, or they now have 57 points on the season as they are sitting 3rd in the West. They now trail the Colorado Avalanche by 7 points in the division. But right now, that is what the NHL is looking like following all of these games. Looking forward to what's going on today, of course, starting off with the prime times. At noon, the Boston Bruins are going to host the Washington Capitals, the best team in the East, on NBC. At 3 o'clock, the Buffalo Sabres are going to host the Pittsburgh Penguins on ESPN Plus. At 4 o'clock, the Anaheim Ducks are going to host the Las Vegas Golden Knights on ESPN Plus, as Golden Knights are one of the top teams in the West. At 6:30, the Philadelphia Flyers are going to host the New York Islanders on NBC Sports Network. And outside of the primetime games, at 3 o'clock, the New Jersey Devils will host the New York Rangers at 3. And then the Vancouver Canucks will host the Toronto Maple Leafs at 7. That is what the NHL, of course, is looking like leading into Sunday. Switching really quickly to baseball to get a glance of what's going on in the MLB. Starting off in Washington, D.C., the Nationals hosted the Arizona Diamondbacks and were able to pull off a 6-2 win after scoring 3 of their runs in the 4th inning. For the Arizona Diamondbacks in this matchup, the start and the loss would end up going to Luke Weaver. Luke Weaver would allow 4 earned runs in 4 innings pitched as he struck out 3 batters. With this loss, Luke Weaver is now 1-1 as a starting pitcher this season. Nobody on the Arizona Diamondbacks was able to log more than 1 hit on the day, but Cole Calhoun and their third baseman, Eduardo Escobar, would hit home runs on the day. Escobar hitting his 6th and Calhoun hitting his 1st. For Washington, the start and the win would end up going to Erick Fedde. Fedde would allow 1 earned run and 5 hits allowed and 5 innings pitched as he struck out 9 batters on the day. With this win, Erick Fedde is now 1-1 as a starting pitcher. Their shortstop, Trey Turner, would go 3 for 5 on the day. Their elite right fielder, Juan Soto, would go 0 for 4 with an RBI. Their left fielder, Kyle Schwarber, would go 2 for 4 with a run. Their third baseman, Starlin Castro, would end up going 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run himself. And then their catcher, Yan Gomes, would go 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs as Yan Gomes hit his first home run of the season. With this win, the Washington Nationals are now 5-7. That is the 4th best record in the National League East, as they currently trail the New York Mets by 2 games in the division. And with this loss, the Arizona Diamondbacks are now 5-10. That is the 4th best record in the National League West. They currently trail the defending MLB champs, Los Angeles Dodgers, by 8 total games in the Western Division. Jumping out to New York, the Yankees hosted the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Rays were able to pull up a 6-3 win as Glasnow picked up his 2nd win of the season. For the New York Yankees in this matchup, the loss and the start would end up going to Jordan Montgomery, who would allow 4 earned runs in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 7 batters. With this loss, Jordan Montgomery is now 1-1 as a starting pitcher for the New York Yankees. Their elite first baseman, DJ LeMahieu, would go 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run. Their elite right fielder, Aaron Judge, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI. Their elite designated hitter, Giancarlo Stanton, would go 0 for 4 as he struck out 3 times. Their elite shortstop, Gleyber Torres, would go 0 for 3 as he walked for himself as well. And for Tampa Bay, the win would end up going to their starting pitcher, Tyler Glasnow, who allowed 1 earned run and 2 hits allowed in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 7 on the day. With this win, Tyler Glasnow is now 2-0 as a starting pitcher. Looking at their lineup, their elite right fielder, Randy Arozarena, would go 0 for 4 as he struck out 3 times. And the only player that logged more than 1 hit for the Rays was their catcher, Francisco Mejia. Francisco Mejia would go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a run as he had his first home run of the season. With this win, the Tampa Bay Rays are now 7-8. They are tied with the Blue Jays and the Orioles for the 2nd best record in the American League East, as they now trail the Red Sox by 3.5 games in the division. With this loss, the New York Yankees are now 5-9. That is the worst record in the AL East, and they currently trail the Boston Red Sox by 5 games. Jumping out to Kansas City, there was a doubleheader as the Royals hosted the Toronto, now Tampa, Blue Jays. In the first matchup, the Blue Jays would beat the Royals 5-1 behind Steven Matz's 3rd win of the season, as they held Kansas City to only 2 hits all game. For Kansas City in this first matchup, the start and the loss would go to Mike Minor, who allowed 4 earned runs in 5.2 innings pitched as he struck out 3 batters on the day. With this loss, Mike Minor is now 1-1 as a starting pitcher. The only player to log an RBI for Kansas City was their left fielder, Andrew Benintendi, who went 1 for 3 with an RBI. Their elite second fielder, Whit Merrifield, would go 0 for 2 with a walk, and their elite catcher, Salvador Perez, would go 0 for 3 as he struck out once on the day for himself, in the first matchup for himself. The start and the win in the first matchup would end up going to Steven Matz. Steven Matz would allow 1 earned run and 2 hits allowed in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters on the day. With this win, Steven Matz is now 3-0 as a starting pitcher. In their batting lineup, their elite first baseman Vladimir Guerrero Jr. would go 2 for 3 with an RBI and 2 runs as he hit his 4th home run of the season. And their right fielder Randall Grichuk would go 2 for 3 with a run for himself. Last but not least, their center fielder Jonathan Davis would go 2 for 3 with an RBI and 2 runs as he hit his first home run of the season for the Blue Jays. And in the second matchup, the Kansas City Royals would even up their record on the day as they beat the Toronto Blue Jays 3-2. This game would go to the bottom of the 7th until Salvador Perez had a walk-off home run to center field to give the Kansas City Royals the win that they needed to at least get a win on the day. For the Blue Jays in this matchup, the start would end up going to Tommy Malone. He only pitched about 2.1 innings, and the loss would end up going to the relief pitcher Joel Payamps, who only recorded 2 outs and allowed a run before Salvador Perez put the Royals up. And for the Blue Jays in this matchup, their elite designated hitter Vladimir Guerrero Jr. would go 0 for 2 with a walk and a run on the day. The only player to log more than 1 hit for Toronto would be their first baseman Rowdy Tellez, who would go 2 for 3 on the day. And then for Kansas City, the start would be given to Irvin Santana, who would only pitch 3 innings, but he allowed 1 run in those 3 innings and struck out a batter. The win would go to their relief pitcher Greg Holland, who would allow no runs in the 1 inning that he pitched. With this win, Holland is now 2-1 as a relief pitcher. In their lineup, their elite second baseman Whit Merrifield will go 1 for 4. Their elite designated hitter Salvador Perez will go 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run on the day. Or their first baseman Carlos Santana would go 2 for 3 with an RBI, and then their center fielder Jared Dyson would end up going 2 for 3 with a run on the day. With this with this doubleheader split, the Kansas City Royals are now 8-5. They still hold the best record in the American League Central as they sit a game and a half ahead of the second place Cleveland Indians. And with this win and loss, the Toronto Blue Jays are now 7-8. They are tied with the Baltimore Orioles and the Tampa Bay Rays for the second best record in the AL East, as all 3 of these teams trailed the Boston Red Sox by 3.5 games in the division. Jumping out to Chicago, out to Wrigley, the Chicago Cubs hosted the Atlanta Braves and were able to put up their biggest offensive output of the season, beating the Braves 13-4 in the game. For Atlanta, the start and the loss would go to Huascar Ynoa, who allowed 6 earned runs in 4 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters on the day. With this loss, Huascar Ynoa is now 0-1 as a starting pitcher. In their batting lineup, their elite right fielder Ronald Acuna Jr. would go 2 for 4 with a walk and 2 runs on the day. Their elite first baseman and reigning National League MVP Freddie Freeman would go 1 for 2 as he walked twice. Their elite left fielder Marcell Ozuna would go 1 for 3 as he finished with 2 RBIs as he walked and struck out on the day for himself. And then for the Chicago Cubs, the win would end up going to their starting pitcher, Trevor Williams, who allowed only 1 earned run and 4 hits in 5 innings pitched. He struck out 4 on the day. With this win, Trevor Williams is now 2-1 as a starting pitcher. In their lineup, their starting catcher, Wilson Contreras, will go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs as he hit 2 home runs on the season. Contreras now has 5 on the season. The Cubs' first baseman, Anthony Rizzo, will go 3 for 4 with 2 runs. Their elite third baseman, Chris Bryant, would go 3 for 5 with 4 RBIs and 3 runs. As Chris Bryant hit 2 home runs for himself, he now has 5 on the season. And then their elite shortstop, Javier Baez, would go 1 for 5 with 3 RBIs and a run, as Javier Baez hit his 4th home run of the season. And last but not least, their second baseman, David Bote, would go 2 for 4 with 4 RBIs and a run, as he hit his 2nd home run of the season. With this win, the Chicago Cubs are now 6-8. That is the 4th best record in the NL Central, as they now trail the Cincinnati Reds by 3 games in the division. With this loss, the Atlanta Braves are now 6-9. That is the worst record in the NL East. They currently trail the New York Mets by 2.5 games in the division. Jumping out to Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Phillies hosted the St. Louis Cardinals, and in the 3rd and 4th innings, the Cardinals were able to score all 9 of their runs to pick up their 7th win of the season. They were able to win this game 9-4. For the Philadelphia Phillies in this matchup, the start and the loss would end up going to Matt Moore, who wouldn't even make it through 3 innings. He allowed 5 earned runs and 2.2 innings as he struck out 3 on the day. With this loss, Matt Moore is now 0-1 as a starting pitcher. In the Phillies lineup, their first baseman, Rhys Hoskins, would go 3 for 5 with 3 runs on the day. And then their shortstop, Didi Gregorius, would go 2 for 4 with an RBI for himself. For the St. Louis Cardinals, the start would end up going to Kwang Hyun Kim, who would only pitch 3 innings and allow 3 earned runs as he struck out 4 on the day. He had no decision. The win would go to Cardinals relief pitcher Ryan Helsley, who allowed only 1 earned run in 1.2 innings pitched as he struck out 3 on the day. And then within their lineup, their elite first baseman Paul Goldschmidt would go 2 for 4 with 2 runs on the day. Their elite third baseman Nolan Arenado would go 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs as Arenado hit his 4th home run of the season. Their future Hall of Fame catcher Yadier Molina would go 3 for 5 with 4 RBIs and 2 runs on the day as Yadier Molina hit 2 home runs. He now has 4 home runs on the season. And then their center fielder Dylan Carlson would go 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run for himself. With this win, the St. Louis Cardinals are now 7-7. They currently have the 3rd best record in the NL Central as they now trail the Cincinnati Reds by 2 games in the division. With this loss, the Philadelphia Phillies are also 7-7. They are tied with the Miami Marlins for the 2nd best record in the NL East as they trail the Mets by a game. Both of them trail the Mets by a game. Jumping out to Fenway in Boston, the Boston Red Sox hosted the Chicago White Sox as with last night's 7-4 win, the Boston Red Sox became the first team in the American League to hit 10 wins on the season. For the Chicago White Sox in this matchup, the start would go to Dylan Cease, who allowed 2 earned runs in 4.2 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters on the day. The loss would end up going to their relief pitcher Cody Hoyer, who would allow 3 earned runs in the 1.2 innings that he's pitched as he struck out 4 batters on the day. With this loss, Hoyer is now 1-1 as a relief pitcher. Their elite shortstop in their lineup, Tim Anderson, will go 1 for 5 with a run on the day. Their elite first baseman, reigning American League MVP, Jose Abreu, will go 2 for 4 with an RBI himself. And then their catcher, Luis Robert, will go 2 for 4 on the day as he struck out. For the Boston Red Sox, the start would end up going to Nick Pivetta, who would allow 2 earned runs in 3 innings pitched as he struck out 3 on the day. He would not get the decision, but the win would go to Adam Ottavino, who would allow no earned runs and strike out all 3 batters in the 1 inning that he played. With this win, Ottavino is now 2-1 on the season as a relief pitcher. In the Boston Red Sox lineup, their center fielder, Kike Hernandez, would go 4 for 5 with an RBI and 2 runs on the day for himself. Their elite designated hitter, JD Martinez, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run. Their shortstop, Xander Bogaerts, would go 4 for 5 with 2 RBIs on the day. With this win, the Boston Red Sox are now 10-4. That is the best record in the AL East and in the entire American League, for that matter. They sit 3.5 games ahead of the second place Baltimore Orioles, Toronto Blue Jays, and Tampa Bay Rays in the division. And with this loss, the Chicago White Sox are now 6-8. They are tied with the Minnesota Twins for the 3rd best record in the AL Central as they sit 2.5 games behind the Royals in the division. Jumping out to Oakland, the Oakland Athletics hosted the Detroit Tigers and were able to pull off a 7-0 win as they won behind Irvin, and they held the Detroit Tigers to only 5 hits on the day. For Detroit, the start and loss would go to their young pitcher Casey Mize, who would allow 5 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 4 on the day. With this loss, Casey Mize is now 1-1 as a starting pitcher. Their right fielder, Robbie Grossman, would be the only player on the team who would log more than 1 hit on the day as he finished 2 for 4. And for the Oakland Athletics in this matchup, the start and the win would go to Cole Irvin, who allowed no earned runs and 4 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters on the day. With this win, Cole Irvin is now 1-2 as a starting pitcher. Their left fielder, Mark Canha, will go 1 for 2 with an RBI as he finished with 3 runs on the day as he hit his 3rd home run of the season. Their first baseman, Matt Olson, will go 2 for 3 with an RBI and 2 runs as he hit his 3rd home run of the season. And then their elite third baseman, Matt Chapman, will go 1 for 2 as he walked once and he finished with an RBI as well. With this win, the Oakland Athletics are now 8-7. That is the 3rd best record in the AL West, as they currently sit a game behind the Los Angeles Angels and the Seattle Mariners at the moment. With this loss, the Detroit Tigers are now 6-9. That is the worst record in the AL Central, as they now trail the Royals by 3 whole games in the division. Jumping out to Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Reds hosted the Cleveland Indians, and for this matchup, the Indians would lead this matchup 2-1 going into the bottom of the ninth. Then for Cincinnati, it would be a Jesse Winkler RBI single to tie it in the bottom of the ninth, and then a Tyler Stevenson RBI single in the bottom of the 10th to give the Reds their 9th win of the season. For the Cleveland Indians, the start will go to Tristan McKenzie, who allowed 1 earned run in 5 innings hit and 5 hits allowed in 5 innings pitched, as he struck out 7 on the day. The loss would end up going to their relief pitcher, or it was their closer their extra innings closer, relief pitcher Oliver Perez. He would allow 1 run in 0.1 innings pitched, which of course would be the end of the game. Their left fielder, Eddie Rosario, will go 2 for 5 as he had an RBI in the day. Their elite third baseman, Jose Ramirez, would go 1 for 4 with a strikeout and a walk. And then their shortstop, Andres Jimenez would go 2 for 3 with an RBI and a run on the day, as he had his second home run of the season for Cleveland. For Cincinnati, the start would go to Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray would only allow 2 earned runs in 4.1 innings pitched, as he struck out 6 on the day. He would not get the decision, but the win would end up going to the relief pitcher Sean Doolittle, who allowed no earned runs in the 1 inning that he pitched. And with this win, Sean Doolittle is now 2-0 as a relief pitcher. Looking at how Cincinnati fared, their left fielder, Adam Winkler, would go 3 for 5 with an RBI on the day. Their first baseman, Joey Votto, will go 2 for 3 with 2 walks. Their elite shortstop, Eugenio Suarez, would go 0 for 5 with 2 strikeouts and a run on the day. And then there's catcher Tucker Barnhart would go 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run, as he had his second home run of the season. With this win, the Cincinnati Reds are now 3-5. They're now 9-5. That is the best record in the National League Central, as they have now won 6 of their last 10 games. They now sit a game ahead of the second place Milwaukee Brewers at this very moment in the NL Central. And with this loss, the Cleveland Indians are now 7-7, as they have won 6 of their last 10 games. They hold the second best record in the AL Central, as they sit a game and a half behind the Kansas City Royals at the moment. Jumping out to Coors Field in Colorado, there was a doubleheader between the Rockies and the Mets. In the first matchup, the Mets would beat the Rockies 4-3 as they scored 3 runs in the last 3 innings. And in the 7th inning, it would be a Francisco Lindor single that put the Mets above and beyond. For the Rockies in this matchup, the start would go to it would go to Chichi Gonzalez. Chichi Gonzalez would allow 1 earned run in 5 innings pitched, as he struck out 3 batters on the day. The loss and the blown save would go to the relief pitcher, Daniel Bard, who would allow 2 earned runs in the 1 inning that he pitched, as he struck out 2 batters on the day. In the lineup, nobody for Colorado was able to log more than 1 hit on the day, but their elite right fielder, Charlie Blackmon, would go 1 for 3 as he struck out twice. For the New York Mets in this matchup, the win would go to their elite starting pitcher, Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom would allow no earned runs, 3 total runs and 3 hits, as he struck out 14 batters in 6 innings pitched. With this win, Jacob deGrom is now 1-1 as a starting pitcher. Their starting center fielder, Brandon Nimmo, would go 2 for 3 on the day. Their elite shortstop, Francisco Lindor, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI. Their elite first baseman, Pete Alonso, would go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a run, as Pete Alonso hit his second home run of the season. And their right fielder, Michael Conforto, would go 2 for 3 on the day. With this win, the New York Mets, they picked up their 6th of the season. And in the second game of this doubleheader, the Colorado Rockies were able to beat the Mets 7-2, as German Marquez picked up his first win of the season. For New York, the start and the loss would end up going to Joey Lucchesi, who allowed 3 earned runs in 3 innings pitched, as he struck out 3 on the day. With this loss, he is now 0-1 as a starting pitcher on the season. Nobody on the Mets would log more than 1 hit on the day. As second baseman, Jeff McNeil will go 1 for 3 with 2 RBIs, both RBIs for the Mets. Their elite shortstop, Francisco Lindor, would go 0 for 2 with a walk and a run. And then their elite first baseman, Pete Alonso, would go 0 for 3 as he struck out all 3 times. For Colorado, the win and the complete game win will go to German Marquez, who allowed 2 earned runs in all 7 innings as he struck out 6 batters on the day. The only player for the Rockies to log more than 1 hit would be their center fielder, Garrett Hampson, who allowed 2 for 4 on the day with 2 runs with 2 runs. And then their elite right fielder, Charlie Blackmon, will go 1 for 2 with an RBI and a run on the day for himself. With with both teams picking up a win, first starting with the Rockies. The Rockies are now 4-11. That is the worst record in the NL West, as they now sit 9 full games behind the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers. And with a win and a loss yesterday, the New York Mets are now 6-4. They currently hold the best record in the NL East, as they sit a full game ahead of the Philadelphia Phillies and the Miami Marlins at the moment. Speaking of the Marlins hosted the San Francisco Giants, and in a game that went all the way down to the 10th inning, it would end up being a 2-run double from Jorge Alfaro to give Miami their 7th win of the season. For the San Francisco Giants in this matchup, the start would end up going to Aaron Sanchez, who would allow 1 earned run in 4.2 innings pitches. He struck out 5. He would not get the decision, but the loss would end up going to their relief pitcher, Harlan Garcia. Harlan Garcia would pitch only 0.2 innings as he allowed 1 earned run and 2 runs on the day. With this loss, he's now 0-1 as a relief pitcher. In the lineup for San Francisco, their first baseman Brandon Belt would go 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs and a run, as he had his second home run of the season. And then their shortstop their shortstop Brandon Crawford would end up going 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run for himself. And then their pinch hitter, their pinch hitter for the day, who would be Austin Slater, he went 1 for 2 with 3 RBIs and 2 runs on the day, as he hit his second home run of the season. And also batting as a pinch hitter, Donovan Solano would go 2 for 2 on the day for San Francisco. For the Miami Marlins in this matchup, the start will go to Sandy Alcantara, who would allow 4 earned runs and 6.1 innings pitched, as he struck out 7 batters on the day. The win would come from their relief pitcher, Yimi Garcia, who would allow no earned runs and see 1 run on his watch in the inning that he pitched. And with his win, he's now 2-1 as a relief pitcher on the season. In their lineup, their left fielder, Corey Dickerson, would go 4 for 6 with a run on the day. Their first baseman, Jesus Aguilar, would go 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs for himself. Their third baseman, Brian Anderson, would go 2 for 5. Their second baseman, Jazz Chisholm Jr., would go 2 for 3 with 2 walks and 2 runs on the day. And then their catcher, Jorge Alfaro, would go 2 for 6 with 3 RBIs on the day. With this win, the Miami Marlins are now 7-7. They are tied with the Philadelphia Phillies for the second best record in the National League East, as they currently trail the New York Mets by a game in the division. With this loss, the San Francisco Giants are 8-6. They currently have the second best record in the National League West, as they currently trail the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers by 4.5 games in the division. Jumping out to Dallas, the Texas Rangers hosted the Baltimore Orioles, and after the Rangers were leading 1-0 through the first 6 innings, the Orioles would score 6 in the final 3 innings to beat the Rangers 6-1 to pick up their 7th win of the season. For the Texas Rangers, the start would end up going to Dane Dunning, who allowed no earned runs in the 5 innings that he pitched, who allowed no earned runs and 5 hits in the 6 innings that he pitched. He struck out 5 batters on the day, and the loss would end up going to their relief pitcher, Joely Rodriguez. He would allow 2 earned runs in the 0.2 innings that he pitched. With this loss, he is now 0-1 as a relief pitcher. In the lineup for Texas, their left fielder, David Dahl, would go 2 for 4 with an RBI for himself. And then their designated hitter, Willie Calhoun, would go 2 for 4 for himself on the day. For the Baltimore Orioles, the start would end up going to Dean Kramer, who allowed 1 earned run in 5 innings, and 5 hits allowed in the 4.2 innings that he pitched, as he struck out 6 batters on the day. He did not get the decision, as the win would end up going to Travis Lincoln Sr., their relief pitcher, who would not allow a single run or hit in the inning that he pitched. And with this win, he's now 1-0 as a relief pitcher. In the lineup, their left fielder, DJ Stewart, would go 2 for 5 with an RBI and a run for himself. Their third baseman, Michael Franco, would go 3 for 5 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs, as he hit his second home run of the season. Their designated hitter, Trey Mancini, would go 2 for 5 with an RBI for himself. And then their shortstop, Freddie Galvis, would go 4 for 4 with 2 runs himself. With this win, the Baltimore Orioles are now 7-8. That they are tied with the Toronto Blue Jays and the Tampa Bay Rays for the second best record in the AL East, as they currently trail the Boston Red Sox by 3.5 games in the division. And with this loss, the Texas Rangers are now 6-9. That is the worst record in the AL West, as they currently trail the Los Angeles Angels and Seattle Mariners by 3 games in the division. Jumping out to Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Brewers hosted the Pittsburgh Pirates, and after scoring 6 runs in the first 2 innings, they were able to pull away with a 7-1 win to beat the Pirates 7-1 on the season. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates in this matchup, the start and the loss would end up going to Trevor Cahill. Trevor Cahill would allow 6 earned runs in 4 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters on the day. With this loss, Cahill is now 0-2 as a starting pitcher. In their batting lineup, their left fielder Brian Reynolds would go 2 for 4 with a run, and their second baseman Adam Frazier would go 2 for 4 for himself. For the Milwaukee Brewers, the win in the start would go to Brett Anderson, who would allow no earned runs and 6 hits and 7 innings pitched as 1 run was scored while he was pitching. He wasn't responsible for it. He struck out 3 batters on the day. Their center fielder, Jackie Bradley Jr., would go 3 for 4 with 2 runs on the day as he hit his second triple of the season. And then their left fielder, Billy McKinney, would finish with 2 hits in 4 at bats as he finished with an RBI and a run on the day. With this win, the Milwaukee Brewers are now 8-6. That is the second best record in the NL Central as they now trail the Cincinnati Reds by a game. And with this loss, the Pittsburgh Pirates are now 6-9. That is the worst record in the NL Central as they now trail the Cincinnati Reds by 3.5 games there. Jumping to San Diego, the San Diego Padres hosted the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the defending champs were able to pull off a 2-0 win thanks to a bases-loaded walk in the 5th and then a solo home run from Justin Turner in the 9th. For the they were also able to hold San Diego both teams were only held to 3 hits all game. For San Diego, the loss would go to their elite starting pitcher, Yu Darvish, who allowed 1 earned run in 7 innings pitched and only 1 hit as he struck out 9 batters on the day. With this loss, Yu Darvish is now 1-1 as a starting pitcher. In their lineup, nobody would finish with more than 1 hit as their elite shortstop, Fernando Tatis Jr., would go 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts, and then their elite third baseman, Manny Machado, would go 1 for 4 as he struck out for himself. For the Los Angeles Dodgers, the start and the win went to their goated starting pitcher, Clayton Kershaw, who allowed no earned runs and only 2 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 8 batters on the day. With this win, Clayton Kershaw is now 3-1 on the season. In the batting lineup for LA, their elite center fielder, Mookie Betts, would go 1 for 4 as he struck out on the day. Their elite shortstop, Corey Seager, would go 0 for 4 as he struck out on the day. No one on the team was able to log more than 1 hit as Justin Turner would go 1 for 1 with an RBI for himself. And the other RBI would go to Clayton Kershaw as he was the batter who was walked to give the Dodgers their first win of the day. With this win, the defending champs are now 13-12. That is the best record in the National League. They're the only team in the National League still with double-digit wins. And in the NL West, they sit 4.5 games ahead of the San Francisco Giants and the San Diego Padres, for that matter. With this loss, the Padres are now 9-7. That is the third best record in the NL West, as they currently sit 4.5 games behind the Dodgers, like I just said. And then last but not least, jumping out to Seattle, the Seattle Mariners hosted the Houston Astros. And in a game where only 1 run was scored, the Houston Astros would finish with 10 hits on the day, as the only run would be a RBI single from Taylor Jones in the 4th to give them their 7th win of the season. For the Seattle Mariners, the start and the loss would go to their starting pitcher, Chris Flexen, who would allow only 1 earned run in the 6 innings that he pitched. He allowed 10 hits, but only 1 earned run. He struck out 3 batters on the day. And in their lineup, nobody on the Mariners was able to log more than 1 hit, as Greinke held them virtually unable to do anything. And the win, of course, would go to Zach Greinke, who would allow no earned runs and 4 hits in 8 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters on the day. With this win, Zach Greinke is now 2-1 as a starting pitcher. And then going into their lineup, their left fielder, Michael Brantley, would go 2 for 4 with a run for himself. And then their center fielder, Miles Straw, would end up going 2 for 4 for himself. With this win, the Houston Astros are now 7-7. That is currently the 4th best record in the American League West. So they sit a game and a half behind the Los Angeles Angels and the Seattle Mariners. With this loss, the Mariners are 9-6. That is the 2nd best record in the AL West, since they sit with 1 win and 1 more loss than the Angels. They are sitting about even in the playoff picture, so that's how that works. And with that said, that's virtually how the MLB is looking for today, going into its Sunday matchups. Of course, starting from the very top and looking starting from the earlier games and looking at the primetime matchups. At 105, the New York Yankees are going to host the Tampa Bay Rays, as Garrett Cole and Andrew Kittredge are both 2-0. So, of course, both of them are looking to get their third win of the season. And then following that, at 7 o'clock on ESPN, the Chicago Cubs are going to host the Atlanta Braves as Kyle Hendricks faces off against Bryce Wilson. Outside of the primetime games, at 1:05, the Washington Nationals will host the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Philadelphia Phillies are going to host the St. Louis Cardinals at the same time as well. At 1:10, it'll be game one of the doubleheader between the Boston Red Sox and the Chicago White Sox. The second game, of course, will take place at 5:10. Following at the same time at 1:10, the Cincinnati Reds will host the Cleveland Indians as Shane Bieber looks to get his second win of the season versus Wade Miley, who's also having a great start for Cincinnati. At the same time, the Miami Marlins are going to host the San Francisco Giants. At 2:10, the Milwaukee Brewers are going to host the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Kansas City Royals are going to host the Toronto Blue Jays as well. At 2:35, the Texas Rangers are going to host the Baltimore Orioles. At 3:10, the Colorado Rockies are going to host the New York Mets as Marcus Stroman looks to get his third win of the season. At 4:07, the Oakland A's are going to host the Detroit Tigers. At 4:10, the Seattle Mariners are going to host the Houston Astros. At the same time, the San Diego Padres, led by their elite starting pitcher Blake Snell, are going to host the Los Angeles Dodgers, the defending champs, led by the reigning National League Cy Young winner Trevor Bauer. And then those are going to be all the games for today, of course, to look forward to. With the MLB at the moment. And then last but not least, jumping into the sport of soccer, starting of course with the MLS before I start covering games that took place off the continent. But first, because yesterday was the second day of matchups following Friday's opening day. Of course, starting off, Atlanta United and Orlando City drew at 0-0. CF Montreal was able to beat Toronto FC 4-2. LAFC was able to beat Austin FC 2-0. DC United beat New York City FC 2-1. Sporting Kansas City beat New York Red Bulls 2-1. Colorado Rapids drew with FC Dallas 0-0. Chicago Fire drew with New England Revolution 2-2. And Nashville SC drew with FC Cincinnati. As the season progresses, I will start to cover like the top teams in each conference. But right now, that's just how the season's getting started. That's what we're doing right now. And then looking at what happened in the English FA Cup semifinal, Chelsea was able to beat Manchester City 1-0 behind Hakim Ziyech's 55th minute goal. And with this, they will advance to the FA Cup final. Looking at to see what else is going on around the league. In the German Bundesliga, Bayern Munich was able to beat Wolfsburg 3-2. Wolfsburg was the third best team in the Bundesliga coming into this game. With this win, Bayern Munich was able to create more separation between them and second place RB Leipzig following Leipzig's loss. For Bayern Munich, their teenage German midfielder Jamal Musiala would score 2 goals in the first half. Of course, big milestone for him as he looks to be a Bayern Munich great coming up. But that's what's going on virtually in the Bundesliga. Looking at what's going on in the Spanish Copa del Rey, Barcelona was able to beat Athletic Bilbao 4-0 in the final. Their first goal would come in the 60th minute from their elite French forward Antoine Griezmann. The second would come from Frenkie de Jong, their elite Dutch midfielder. And then the third and fourth goals would come from their goated Argentinian forward Lionel Messi in the 68th and 72nd minutes. With this win, of course, yet another trophy to add to the case for all of these Barcelona players. Congratulations for a well-played tournament. But that's everything from yesterday. Looking forward to what's going on today as we look to wrap up this weekend. It'll be the second game of the English FA Cup, the other FA Cup semifinal, as Leicester City faces off against Southampton for a chance to face off against Chelsea in the FA Cup final. And then looking out in the Premier League, Manchester United will host Burnley at 11 o'clock. Looking at how the Premier League stacks at the moment, Manchester United still sits 11 points behind Man City. A win here could move them to within 8 points at the very moment. So, I mean, it's still important for them to win as they sit 7 points ahead of third place Leicester City at the moment. There are 3 games in Major League Soccer. First off, the game that's going to be on primetime will be between Inter Miami and LA Galaxy on ABC and ESPN Deportes, as that's David Beckham's squad. At 5:30, Columbus Crew SC is going to host Philadelphia Union, and then Vancouver Whitecaps are going to host the Portland Timbers at 10 o'clock. In the Bundesliga, Borussia Dortmund will host Werder Bremen. And looking at where Borussia Dortmund sits right out in the Bundesliga at the moment, they currently sit in sixth place in Europa League. A win here could be important for them as they could jump into fifth and move even closer to a Champions League spot as the season is winding down. Looking out at Italian Serie A, AC Milan will face off against Genoa at 6:30 this morning. And looking into Italian Serie A, AC Milan still holds the second best record in the Serie A as they sit 8 points behind Inter Milan at the moment. And then Juventus will face off against Atalanta on ESPN Plus at 9 o'clock. With a win here, Juventus could see themselves move to right behind AC Milan. They could see themselves still right behind AC Milan in the table, as a win here would be very crucial for them. And then Napoli will host Inter Milan at 2:45. Napoli holds the fifth best record in Serie A as Inter holds the first. So this looks to be a pretty solid Serie A matchup between two very quality top-level teams. Looking out to what's going on in La Liga, at 10:15, Atletico Madrid will host Eibar. Atletico Madrid, a win here would be very vital to them, as looking to where they are in La Liga. They are currently sitting at the very top by 1 point over Real Madrid and by 2 over Barca. So every point counts. So a lot of pressure is on them to win. And then at 3 o'clock, Getafe will host Real Madrid, as of course a win here would be very big for Real Madrid as they sit 1 point out of first place. Looking out to Ligue 1, PSG will host Saint-Étienne as PSG is sitting near the top of Ligue 1. A win here could be very crucial for them to eventually pass or move into right behind Lille in the table. But with that said, that's everything that's going on with soccer at the moment. Once again, today is Sunday, April 18th, 2021 out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims. And I want to thank you for listening to all 55 minutes of this piece. And once all of today's exhibitions are finished, I will come back to you tomorrow on Monday, April 19th with a new episode. Once again, thanks for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and I will catch you tomorrow. Peace out.